stop playing so dumb. I mean, has he been drinking that stuff much yet? And don't you laugh about it. Some single men stop drinking when they get married, and others start. Brick never touched liquor before he... Fair or not fair, I want to ask you a question. One question. Do you make Brick happy in bed? Because I know that something's not right. You're childless, and my son drinks. When a marriage goes on the rocks are there, in bed, right there.
Hi, I'm Sally Gibney. Welcome to Let's Talk. Well, that was just Melissa Hurst as Big Mama from Cat on the Hot Tin Roof. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for coming.
I am thrilled to be here with you.
It's just so exciting to have you. And you were absolutely fabulous as Big Mama.
Oh,
and
thank you.
I just brought this little review with me, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read it because I think all of you at home would love to hear this. Hurst has delighted regional audiences for years, and she showed us why directors keep bringing her back from New York City annually. This woman exudes poise, grace, class, and most of all, versatility. Hurst can play any role from silly to sublime, and all with peerless stage presence. When Big Mama sat on the couch just 3 feet from me, that rasping breath and flowing tears sent chills down my spine, making me hold my pen tightly for fear of dropping it. That's not acting, that's brilliance. Yay! How is it playing Big Mama?
Well, it's a role I never would have thought of myself playing, I must say. It's written so that, well, she's like a bulldog.
And that's so not like you.
Not really, but it's fun to have worked on just embracing this woman that's just gutsy. She's out there. She's, laughs at herself, pulls pranks on people.
And she's not very nice, is she?
No, she's actually really nice.
Is she?
Yes, Big Mama is a huge-hearted person.
Oh.
But what happens is Big Daddy, who's the plantation owner and her husband of many years, is very abusive to her verbally and continually tells her how fat she is and how he can't stand to look at her.
Oh.
And it's really...
Yeah, not very nice.
No. And so to take that on, there are moments where Big Mama just has to, she loves him so much, despite all his flaws, that she will let him say things to her, and then she will respond, "You mean you don't believe that I love you?"
Oh, so she's very vulnerable then.
Yes.
Wow.
And she is written as being quite heavy and all that, but most of the time she's not been played by people who were, the first actress that ever played her was Mildred Dunnick, and she apparently was really petite.
Really?
Like about 5 feet tall and really tiny. And
so it didn't really fit into the role.
Well, the debate is, and I think this is interesting, that Big Daddy really has the problem.
Oh, yeah.
And he berates her because of his own problems and not because she really is the things that he says.
Well, isn't that what they say, that it's really not personal? It's usually from what's going on within the person who's abusing whatever. But anyway.
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
Yeah. So this has been quite an experience for you.
Yes, and it's the first time I've ever gotten to perform Tennessee Williams.
Oh, wow.
Which, when you're taking acting classes, he's the one that you work on the most because just classic American playwright with beautiful language and very human characters. And this is the first chance I've ever gotten to be in one of his plays.
Well, now let's talk about how you started out in acting. Tell us about Melissa Hurst.
Well, I didn't want to act when I was a kid at all. There were many actors who loved to perform from a young age. I was not one of them. I went to summer camp when I was 9, and we all had to be in the play at the end of the session, and I didn't want to be in it. I feigned illness so that I wouldn't have to be in the show. And finally, they let me be a tree, which involved my wearing a paper bag over my head and down my body and just my arms sticking out like that. Because that was the only thing I would do. A lot of actors are shy, I think. I think I am also shy. I'm friendly, but I'm shy.
Yeah.
And the first time I was ever really in a play was high school. I sang in the choir, and they again made us all audition for the high school musical. And I got cast in a lead role as Sarah Brown in Guys and Dolls. What I liked most, even though at that point I was 14 and had never had a drink and didn't really understand any of this, was that Sarah Brown goes to Havana with Sky Masterson, and he gets her drunk on some kind of pina colada type things, and I got to stand up on a chair with a breakaway bottle and smash it over someone's head, and it was just sugar. It's made out of spun sugar or something like that, but it would splinter all over the place. And I thought,
this is fun.
This is fun.
I like this.
All the things I get to be that I'm not in daily life, but there's
I can make believe.
Yes, and there's a certain abandon in it. So
because it's not you, it's the character, but you're doing it.
Right, exactly.
So where did it go from there?
Well, I got a scholarship from my high school to study over the summer when I was 16, and I studied locally, and I got involved with a theater group that were primarily college students, and they were at Juilliard, they were at NYU, they were at SMU, at Carnegie Mellon.
So this is in New York?
This was in Ohio.
In Ohio?
Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Oh my goodness.
Is my hometown. And they were all in professional actor training programs, and I was the youngest one. And the guy that was in charge of the theater said, have you ever thought about going to Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan? Because you could major in theater. And I figured I wouldn't. But he talked me into applying over the summer, which I did. I got in and got a scholarship, but it wasn't enough for, my family couldn't afford it even then, so I turned it down and went to 5 weeks at my hometown high school, and then got a call from the school saying they could double my scholarship, which meant that there would just be $1,000 to pay. It still wasn't enough. So I called a guy at home on a weeknight that I had heard his name. He was the head of a foundation called the Giles Foundation in Cleveland. And I said, I don't know, and do you ever give scholarships to high school students? And he said, no. And I said, well, do you think you might ever be able to? And he said, what is this about? And I explained. He goes, all right. When you get there, just have them send me a bill and I'll send a check for $500 for you. And I said, don't you want to meet me? And he said, I'm a busy man, young lady. Just have them send me a bill and I'll send a check for $500.
Seek and you shall find. Isn't that amazing?
I never did meet this man. His name was George Raudebush.
Did you send him a thank you note?
I did. And he paid that for my last 2 years of high school, so I went to Interlochen, and that's where I really started thinking, maybe I would pursue this as a career.
So obviously you had a talent, and other people saw this talent in you, because
maybe
look how it went along.
I was reluctant at first, but maybe that.
But you must have enjoyed it as you were going along, when you were doing it.
One of my after Guys and Dolls, which I found out that really I love singing and I love musicals, but I don't think I'm cut out for doing them really. But we did Our Town the following year. And remember when you and I were in Our Town together?
Up at Green Mountain.
Yes, and
Green
then down
Mountain
at Old
College.
Castle. And in high school I played the same part that I did
as an adult in that production.
Oh, really?
And I thought, oh, I like this kind of acting. So.
And that's how you started being a more serious actress. But you do comedy as well.
Oh yeah,
I love comedy.
I love to do comedy, and Big Mama is funny. And Cat on a Hot Tin Roof too. And she, as I said, she plays pranks. At one point, she asks the preacher to help her get up. She can't get up by herself. And she ends up pulling him into her lap and holding him there and, and getting everybody to laugh. She's outrageous.
Oh, that's so. Then, you went to college? And what happened after that?
Well, I went to SMU in Dallas for 2 years, which had a superb theater program. But I got an opportunity to transfer to NYU in the middle of that, so I did that and went for 3 years and graduated from there. And then my first job out of college was doing telephone surveys for the Harris poll. About a week after graduation, that's what I was doing.
You were making money, though.
Yes.
You had to do that.
I had to pay my rent in New York City.
Where were you living in New York City?
In the East Village.
Where?
My first apartment was on 10th Street between 2nd and 3rd, then 6th Street between 2nd and 3rd, and then Avenue A. So NYU at the time, the theater school was in the East Village. And the East Village was a very rough-edged place.
Well, I lived on Perry Street for 5.5 years. So that was the West Village.
Yes.
But it was a wonderful place, a wonderful time.
Yeah. In the East Village, there was a
little
lot
different.
Do I say? There were a lot of prostitutes and drug addicts on every corner.
And here you were, this sweet little girl.
My first semester at NYU, I actually was afraid to go out at night.
Now, when was this?
In 1975.
75, in the 70s, wow.
Yeah, so the East Village had not been cleaned up or gentrified.
At that time?
At all.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So then what happened?
Well, then I got a theater job, which was touring around the country to college campuses doing 2 plays in repertoire. There were 3 women in each cast, in each show. So there were 3 actresses touring with a crew. And we did Vanities by Jack Hefner, which is a Southern comedy. And then we did a Sylvia Plath play, which was very serious because she wrote, she was a depressed person with a beautiful gift of language. So we did those on tour, and it was a wild experience.
I'll bet.
A lot of things happened. Well, we were about to go to where 3 Mile Island was, to perform the show, and the day before we were going, 3 Mile Island happened.
Wow.
One of the actresses had a nervous breakdown.
Oh, wow.
On the tour, a serious. Yes, where we had to stop the tour and take her back to New York, and she was hospitalized for many years after that. It was
pretty intense.
It was quite intense.
Yeah.
But it was also fun. Everywhere we went, we would.
It was a new experience.
Yes, yeah. We were only 23 or so we were we got invited to every party that was happening at every college. It was really, really fun.
Yeah. And then you went on to, now what other things did you do after that?
Well, very soon after that, the following year, I auditioned for Dorset Theater Festival in Vermont, and that was 1980. And I got cast for their whole season to do 6 plays in 11 weeks.
Wow.
Which I did.
Now that must have been really something. You rehearse, the show is on, and are you rehearsing for the next show while you're still performing the one behind? Wow.
In those days, it was before the theater became an Actors Equity theater, which it became the following year, I think.
Oh, I see.
My first year, we could rehearse 8 hours during the day and then go and do a show at night.
So there were no regulations then. It was a matter of they could do whatever. You had to do whatever it took.
And we were all thrilled to do it.
Yeah.
So
And you were young.
And I was young, and we all lived in the Colony House in Dorset, and they cooked our meals for us. They had a chef that we all sat at the big dining table at the Colony House, and
it was an amazing time, wasn't it?
yeah,
It was a different time. Yeah.
it was wonderful.
Now, was Dom DeLuise around then?
I think he was, but I didn't ever meet him. I know that he was in Dorset for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So you never knew him?
Did not. I'd met his wife,
Yeah.
but not Dom.
Carol. He was just an amazing man. But I want to talk about you. So, so you did the Dorset Theater, and then what would you do? That was during the summer. And then what would you do for the rest of the year?
Well, I worked at many regional theaters around the country, in Pittsburgh Public Theater and Repertory Theater of St. Louis and Capitol Rep in Albany, and many Jiva at Rochester. And I also did some new plays. I've done a number of new plays in the city. And the summer after I first worked in Dorset, I got my Actors Equity card doing a play called Dark Ride by Len Jenkin. I didn't know who he was. He had just won an Obie Award. I had no idea what I was walking into, but he was a cult hit of a playwright, which I had no idea. And there were 10 of us in the play. We sold out every performance. They had ad performances, and because of that, I got my equity card. So I worked on a number of new scripts. That's really one of my passions, is to get to
new scripts.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm drawn to kind of quirky things in those when I do those plays.
Well, you do it so well. What's been your favorite role that you've played? I'm sure there are many, but is there anything that really stands out?
Well, my first, I guess maybe because it was my first major regional theater job where I was getting a good weekly salary and being put up in a beautiful apartment and all that, but the play especially was wonderful, was Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Really?
And that was at Pittsburgh Public Theater, and I was there from February to May doing that play. And I was much younger then, so I was playing Honey. And it's such a phenomenal
Amazing script, right?
It's really intense. It's over 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours.
Wow.
And on weekends, we would have a Friday night show. Well, we played Tuesdays through Sundays, but on the weekends, we sometimes would have 5 shows.
Wow.
And never leave the
How do
theater. They had to feed us between shows.
And Equity let you do that?
Yeah.
Wow.
They did.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I was wondering, when we were driving over here, I wanted to ask you, how is it now when you're doing a play, and you have a script and you have the little what do you call them when you know what you're going to say,
well, we highlight the script. Cues?
Or cues. The cues.
Okay.
So what happens if you're on stage and suddenly you're blank? What happens then? Does that ever happen?
Well, yes. I'm sorry to say that sometimes it does. And usually, because the cast, you and
know
the
each
cast
other
know
so
the
well.
play well enough, you can finesse it. Sometimes you know what the other person is grasping to say, and you can just
feed it to them.
You kind of cue it in, like, aren't you wondering about such and such? And they'll be, oh, well, actually, I was just going to ask you that. And sometimes, I have not personally had this experience, but I actually know of a couple of times in Broadway productions, my husband was in one of them, where it came to a complete halt. The show was stopped. The actor turned to the audience and said, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I have forgotten my line. I am going to go off stage and get the script." Broadway productions.
You're kidding.
Tony Award-winning Broadway productions. You just think it wouldn't happen, but it has.
And what happened, I wonder? I mean, he went off, got the script, and continued?
Yes, it wasn't my husband.
No, it wasn't Richard.
No, but yes. And my husband was also in a play once where somebody who was pretending to fall asleep actually fell asleep.
Oh my goodness.
They
had to wake him up?
They had to wake him up. So you think, in really professional situations it just wouldn't happen, but
these things do happen. I'm sure you could write a book about the things that happen along the way.
It's sometimes madness, but a beautiful madness.
Yeah. And now you're living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you doing at this time, like in between these different shows that you're doing?
Most recently, I have discovered a job that I didn't even really know existed, which is to narrate audiobooks. Oh. I did a play reading one day at a space I didn't know what it was. On a break, I was walking down the hall and I went, what's happening? There are all these people in these studios and they look like they're reading or something, and someone said, oh yeah, they do. They narrate audiobooks here. And I said, I'd love to try that. Uh-huh. I was told that often actors, even really talented actors, may not have a gift for doing that.
Really?
Because it involves a tremendous amount of concentration and you read for hours at a stretch. But I still wanted to try it because I love to read. Uh-huh. And so I started about 4 years ago getting work doing that. And I just, right before coming up here to do Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, I narrated a 16-and-a-half-hour nonfiction book, which had a lot of medical terms in it.
Oh my goodness.
And things. I had to be told how to pronounce
certain words, I'm sure.
Yeah. You would know these words because you're
my nursing background.
That's
but
right.
Still,
but I was saying things like vasopressin and, I don't know. Uh-huh. But it was a very interesting book, actually, about healing, self-healing in a lot of ways of
nice.
The chakras in the body and.
So you're
like
learning while you're doing this. I mean,
absolutely.
It's a very interesting kind of thing. Yeah.
It was a fascinating book. It hasn't come out yet. It'll probably come out in 2015. But I did learn a lot. It's about relationships also. It's about energy and relationships. So
there's no end to what you can do with this career of yours.
Well,
I mean,
there are a lot of things that I've discovered along the way in terms of jobs that I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I had a job for about 5 years portraying a depressed patient over the telephone. And I was paid. They were training physicians on how to ascertain levels of depression, and we were trained on a scale of 1 to 5 how to be ambiguous enough that it would take a skilled person to really
to determine that,
to ask the right questions to. And then, of all things, they started having the actors who were doing this over the telephone come do it live at different training conferences. And so I went to LA, I went to San Diego, to San Antonio, and to Paris.
Wow. That's quite a perk.
I worked for one morning, but I was there for 5 days, getting to be in Paris.
Wow.
So actors do all kinds of weird
There's
stuff.
all kinds of things. And you just really kind of pick up what you can as you go along, I'm sure.
Yeah, and
whatever works.
The more people you get to know, if something comes up and they think you might be right for it, they'll suggest you for it, which is what happened to me with the depression job.
The thing I would expect that doing all of these things just sort of makes you a better actress, because it's sort of, you're getting all of this experience and all of these different ideas and feelings that you can bring to the roles that you play.
It's interesting training as a human being and as an actress. And one of the things with those jobs is you're not up on a stage. You're when you do it this live, you're really talking with them
and on a one-to-one.
And if you don't really have a conversation, you're not believable.
Yeah.
And it's I feel like I've learned a lot about the human mind and emotions and body. The jobs enhance
Yeah.
your
It
life.
has. You know, another question I wanted to ask you, I'm sort of going all over the place here, but when you're on stage, and if you know that there are people you know in the audience, does that impact you at all, or are you so engrossed in what you're doing that you don't really have a sense or care about who's there?
Well, ideally, you're so engrossed that you're not thinking about who's out there.
Uh-huh.
But I will admit that on occasion, it will flash through my mind, for instance, oh, my son is out there.
Uh-huh.
Or fellow professionals
Uh-huh.
who sometimes, they'll tell you exactly what they think.
Uh-huh. Well, you want to
afterwards.
hear, too, I'm sure.
Not
Not
really.
always. Please don't tell me.
It depends. But I know one person that comes and goes, you were very good. I have a few notes for you. And I go, no,
dear.
no, thank you.
Now, sometimes your director will have notes for you.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And
Because I know at the Dorset Theater, John used to he would take notes after every performance, wouldn't he? And
yes,
tell you
that's quite
what could have been.
unusual. But you're absolutely correct that a director that I worked with and many of our actor friends at Dorset worked with, Dorset Theater Festival. His name was John Morrison. He's since passed on. A wonderful, wonderful man.
Darling man, yeah.
And director. And he is the only director I have ever known that came to every performance, took notes, and put them in writing for you. They would be waiting for you on your dressing table when you came for the next performance.
Oh my goodness.
And they were quite nuanced and detailed. And
Oh my goodness.
so he kept his eye on things throughout.
Throughout the whole play.
Many times directors will at some point feel like they surrender their production
And let it
over
go.
to the actors
Yeah.
and the stage manager. And
But he never did that.
he never did that, ever. I loved him so much. He was a dear friend of mine. And sometimes I would feel so aggravated.
I just want
when
to
he
shake
would-
him.
Yeah.
As they say in Frozen, let it go, let it
Let
go.
it go. I shouldn't say this maybe, but I actually know some people that when they got them, they would just ball them up and throw them into
the
the trash and not read them.
You know, we didn't touch on your personal life. Just tell us a little bit about your husband and your son.
Well, I am married to an actor. His name is Richard Council, and we have been together for over 33 years.
Wow, that's great.
And we have a son, Will, who
Now,
is...
he's done a lot, hasn't he? Just a little bit
Yes.
about Richard. Wasn't
Yes.
he on Law and Order?
He's been on Law and Order. He has played a lot of bad guys, including in Die Hard with a Vengeance. He plays a really bad guy named Otto and gets his head blown off by Bruce Willis in the elevator. And he has done a lot of Broadway plays. He was in I'm Not Rappaport by Herb Gardner for 2.5 years.
Wow.
He's now semi-retired,
Uh-huh.
but I think he could be coaxed
back
out
in.
of retirement if something really good comes along. The most recent thing that he did was with Al Pacino called You Don't Know Jack, with Al Pacino playing Jack Kevorkian.
Wow.
And Richard plays the judge in that.
Wow. And your son, Will?
Yes, we have a son, Will, who is 21, and
He's wonderful.
he's just really, you and I were talking a little bit beforehand. My bottom line of whether life is going well is if he is good, if he's doing well, if he's
And he-
happy,
and he
if he's
is.
productive. And he is. He's.
I think most mothers feel that way. You know, when our children are fine and well, we feel good.
Yes,
Yeah.
it really, there have been, he's 21, and when he was in high school, there were some rocky
Moments, yeah.
rocky moments, and in those times it was unsettling for me because what I care most about, I love acting, what I care most about is that he's doing well.
Because you're a mother.
Yeah. I
And
guess
that's
so.
what mothers do.
I know. Can't help
That's
it.
what mothers do.
They'd rather we not sometimes,
I know, but it's just a mother thing. You know, I think it's just a mother thing that we all do that. I have so enjoyed being with you.
Oh.
This is so wonderful, and I hope that you'll come back again.
Absolutely,
And
I
we
will.
can do it.
I
and-
always love talking with you.
Yeah, and just it's just been so much fun. And for all of you out there, I hope you've enjoyed being with Melissa as much as I have. And for our next segment, we're going to be talking with Mark Twain. So stay tuned.
Ladies and gentlemen, by request, I will ask leave to introduce your lecturer of today, Mr. Samuel Clemens, otherwise Mark Twain, a gentleman whose great learning, whose historical accuracy, whose devotion to science, and whose veneration for the truth is equaled only by his high moral character and his majestic presence. Please welcome Mark Twain. Thank you. Thank you very much. I like to make my own introductions, then I can get in all those facts. Well, it's not really other people's introductions I care about. It's the compliments that sometimes come with them. I'm uncomfortable when my name is mentioned as one of the great authors because the great authors have a sad habit of dying off. Well, Chaucer is dead. Spencer is dead. So is Milton. So is Shakespeare. And I'm not feeling too well myself. I never had but one public introduction that I thought was exactly the right thing, and it was made by a man who wasn't even acquainted with me. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I shan't fool away any unnecessary time in this introduction because I don't even know this man. Or at least I know only two things about him. One, he's never been in the penitentiary. And the other is I don't know why." Now, such an introduction as that can put a man at his ease. I smoke about 20 cigars a day. I was born asking for a light. I don't recall when it was that I started smoking, but I know that it was within my father's lifetime, and he passed out of this life when I was just a shade past 11. I can stop smoking any time I want, though I've done it 1,000 times. Now, recently, I was approached on the street by a tramp who asked me for a handout so he could get something to eat. I offered him a cigar. He said, "Sir, I'm hungry. I don't smoke." I said, "Well, how about if I buy you a drink?" And he said, "Sir, I want something to eat. I don't drink." I said, "Well, how about if I put $2 on a sure winner for you tomorrow?" He said, "Sir, I may not be the most righteous man, but I never gamble. Please, sir, couldn't you spare a quarter for a man to get something to eat?" I said, "Well, I'll do better than that. I'll stick you to a whole dinner if you let me introduce you to Mrs. Clemens. I want her to see what happens to a man who doesn't smoke, drink, or gamble."
Mark Twain. Well, do you ever wonder what he looks like in person? Here he is, Ron Crawford. Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Sally?
Thank you for being here. And Sydney Crawford, thank
Hi.
you so much for coming.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Oh, well, I can't tell you what this means to me. This is such a treat to have the two of you here. And I mean, we've known each other for years, but it's just really, really very, very special. So let's start. Ron and Sydney both, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you do so many things. Where do you begin, or where did you begin?
Well, I was, when I was a little child, I wanted to be an actor.
Really?
That was my burning desire. That's all I ever thought about. And you know how life is, you kind of drift off course. And, but I could also draw. So for many years, I was an animator.
And you still are?
Yes, but, well, not animation.
Not much,
I still
no.
do a lot
You
of
do do a
drawing
lot
and
of art,
painting.
yeah.
But for many years, I made a living as an animator
Oh,
in the
really?
film business.
Uh-huh.
And she and I worked together in the film business. She She took care of the business, thank goodness, because that made me survive.
He tried for about 2 weeks.
I tried, yes. And it was a rocky ship. So when I got to be 50 years old, actually I was talking to a friend of mine, and he worked in a nursing home, and he pushed patients around, and he said, the thing I hear all the time is, I wish I'd tried what I wanted to do. And I kept thinking about that. I was 50 years old, and I loved doing animation, but I was repeating myself. And so one day I locked the door and I walked away and I said, I'm going to be an actor.
Really? Just like that?
And I went to work.
And you went to work?
Serious work.
Serious work. Somebody had to pay the bills.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, really?
Yep.
That is so amazing. So what'd you do?
Well, I started taking classes at a local drama
And you were in New York?
No, I was in Evanston, Illinois.
Oh, really? This is
Yes.
before New York.
Yes.
And yeah, we lived in Evanston for 30 years in Chicago. So I started doing things like that, and I got to know, and fortunately I had some friends who were at Northwestern, and they were in the theater business and things like that. So I got a couple roles. And
The first one was at the Goodman Theater.
the Goodman Theater.
He was a French chef.
French chef. All my lines were in French.
And did you know French at the time?
No.
No.
So you
I
learned
was
it.
terrified. As if I was tied to the tracks and the train was coming. So that was my first experience. And then Sydney was working in a framing store, and a friend of ours came in to have something framed.
A friend, Frank Galati.
Frank
I don't know
Galati.
if you know Frank Galati, but he's one of the premier directors in the country.
Oh.
Yes, he's Steppenwolf. He's
of course.
Broadway.
Oh,
he's,
of course.
Yeah.
So he came into the
He
came
came
in to have
into the
something-
store. I was on my way out, and I thought, oh, it's Frank. Think I'll stay. And he had a lot of things to frame, so I said, oh, here, let me help you and all that. And he said, Ron's still acting, right? And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He said, do you suppose he'd be interested in auditioning? He said, I've done an adaptation of Grapes of Wrath. And he said, maybe he'd like to audition for that. And I said, yes. So I told Ron. We were in Pennsylvania visiting our son.
First of all, I didn't even know who Steppenwolf was.
No, Ron had no idea who they were. And they called him, because we had called forward in and said, can you get here like tomorrow for the audition? And there was no other time. So he got on a plane, flew back to Chicago, and did the audition, and they
I
cast
had
him.
learned that I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take any more speech from network. I learned that and did that. And they said, well, that's pretty good. So, so I got the part.
Yeah.
So I was in the ensemble, and it was a 3-hour, when we first did
Oh,
it
I
in
think
Chicago,
3 and
it
a
was
half.
almost 4 hours.
Yeah, it was long.
The audience left halfway through.
Oh, sure.
The Tribune in Chicago, said, don't go see this thing. So then so that was over after a month, and we thought, well, that's very interesting. And then the Des Mackinac in La Jolla Playhouse in California said, why don't you come out here and work on this show, and we'll cut it down and make it So we had 8 or 10 weeks.
Yeah, we were there a long time.
In hot tubs and full moons. And
Yes, the ocean.
Tough
you know.
life.
Oh,
But we did work hard, and we got the show down to really a brilliant show in 3 hours exactly.
Wow.
And then we went to London
yeah.
and did it at the National Theatre in London.
Well, first we went back to Chicago for like 2 or 3 months, and then they'd call and say, oh, we're going to London. So we packed up, went to London to the National.
And then we thought, well, what a
That was
great
wonderful,
adventure.
yeah.
Wow, what else? And about 6 months later, the Shuberts called from New York and wanted to take it to Broadway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's this actor who just started.
Yeah,
you
at
know,
age 50.
At age 50, having no idea what he's doing on Broadway. It's absolutely amazing story. And the cast, the Steppenwolf people are magnificent actors. So I was in good company. And if
Gary
I messed
Sinise, Tony, Terry Kinney,
a lot of
John C. Riley,
Wow.
Jeff
Lois
Perry,
Smith.
Lois Smith. I mean,
Wow.
it was a remarkable, Sally Murphy. It was a remarkable cast, it really was. And we literally spent 2 years together.
Wow.
And you know what's interesting? Oftentimes in theater, they come together and bond and everything, and then you go away and then you don't see. we are all still close friends.
Isn't that neat?
In fact, last night, the stage manager for Grapes, came to see Ron's show, and we had a whole evening together, and we're always seeing each other all the
Isn't that
time.
neat?
It's wonderful.
It's very special.
It's very
But I think
special.
that says a lot about both of you.
Oh,
It really, no, seriously. I think it really does. I think
Yeah,
because the two of you are so easy and wonderful to be with that people, just really feel very, very comfortable with you and they like you.
Good.
Yeah. So then what?
Well, so then we're sitting in a bar one night in New York, and we said, wouldn't it be fun to live here in New York City? It's so exciting. We had no idea what that meant because we had a big old Victorian house in Illinois. We had 2 cats.
cats, I forgot about those.
So we had to go back and fix up the house and sell it and take the 2 cats with us, and it was an immense effort.
Oh, I'll bet.
And we still didn't have any money. And so when we ended up in New York, babysitting apartments and
Wow.
living pretty much.
Subletting and moving, yeah.
Farmers market and subway tokens. We
That
said.
was about it for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But
never
wait,
regretted.
Now, in the meantime,
Yes.
you have kids?
Yes,
3
we do.
children.
And now they were out of the house when you were doing
were,
this? By the
yes.
time, okay.
They were
so-
Although I had a granddaughter who was 5.
Is she the one who's engaged now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
she's
just
beautiful.
got
I
engaged.
saw her picture on Facebook.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
She is the happiest girl I've ever met.
Oh,
The other day we met her on the sidewalk, and she had this big heavy bag on her shoulder. And we said, "What's that?" And she said, "Bridal magazine."
10 days after she was
After
engaged.
she was engaged.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
But that's what it's about, right?
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh,
And
that's-
the young man is just wonderful. And they met they were doing Romeo and Juliet. She was Juliet, he was Romeo.
Oh,
They
in
fell
school
in love.
or in...
No, in the play. They were just both
In the
cast.
play, they are.
Wow.
And both actors. And she called and said, I've fallen in love with Romeo. And Ron and I went,
Oh, dear.
oops, well.
That's a cliche. You know.
Yeah.
You don't fall in love with Romeo.
But it's again that bonding, and then everyone separates. But 3 years later, they're engaged, and he's a terrific young man. He really
nice.
is, yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
we're
He
very
plays piano
happy.
beautifully, sings beautifully.
Oh,
he's really
wow.
good. So-
He's a keeper.
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
he's a keeper. That's right.
So anyway, so then you're in New York.
I struggled through, and when I got out of the Broadway show, and I went to casting directors and auditions and things, they knew right away I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to go back and start at zero in New York. And I went to a number of acting classes, and some of those ones that last all night, and the
yeah.
The kind you hear about, yeah.
Yeah, the teacher screams at you an inch from your face. You don't know what you're doing. I said, I know.
You're right.
But after 2 years of that, I came out of there galvanized. Nobody could yell at me again and make me feel bad. So,
Yeah.
and I did a number of movies. I was in many shows, and one of the summer shows that I was so excited about, summer stock. Every actor wants to do that.
Yeah.
It started in Dorset.
Yeah.
And,
well, I remember you from
yes,
back then. Yeah.
And then
That's when we met.
I came up here in we're trying to figure out the year, but I think it was 1997 or 98, and came up here and I did Valley Song by
Fugard.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I did a number of shows in
You
Dorset.
did. I know.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah. Which was your favorite that you
Valley
did?
Song. Well, I loved them all.
Yeah.
How High the Moon was terrific. The one where the girl wanted to be a nun. What was the name of that?
No, don't ask me.
Well, anyway.
I can't remember.
And what was the other one you did with Paula?
Oh, Night of the Iguana. Yes.
Yeah.
That was
great, too.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
You were unbelievable in that.
I was
was a
90
great
years
show.
old
In that movie, in that show.
in that
Yeah.
show. I
Yeah.
came
You-
up with all this makeup and latex and everything to make me look old. And they said,
said, "You don't need
don't
it."
use anything.
Oh, that was a really go booster, wasn't it? But you were great in that show.
Oh, thanks.
I remember because our daughter came with me. Sally
Oh.
Ann and I came to see it. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I had one laugh line that where there was just mayhem on stage, and everybody was yelling and screaming at each other, and I was 90 years old, and I couldn't hear. So I was having a great time. I was drinking my whiskey, and I had a cherry on top, and I had on a stem, and I'd say, this is just wonderful. What a great time. And the audience got a big laugh out of it. So then they ran out of the cherries with the stem, and I put this cherry in my mouth, and no one laughed. And I made the prop man, go to Rutland and get some cherries
with the stem on them. I remember that so well, because I remember going with Sally Ann.
Well, the productions were always so superb here.
Oh, they
Yes.
were.
And continue.
Yeah.
You know,
no, it's
they
just
really
really,
do.
really wonderful. I loved it's wonderful now, but it was kind of a different time, and it was, you really seemed to get to know the actors better because all of you came back, and you know, so it was a very, very special
good.
time. You know.
And then all the evenings at the Dorset Inn.
Yeah,
Afterwards.
exactly. Absolutely. I can't forget.
So I was
then.
went to breakfast one morning with Bill Apperly, who
yeah.
the set designer, and he said, "You know, you look an awful lot like Mark Twain." And people had told me that for years, and I never made any thought beyond that. But he said, "We got a fundraiser coming up, and we want people to do some little bits. Could you do 15 minutes of Mark Twain?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I started doing research, and I did more than that, was probably
longer.
45 minutes of Mark Twain, and it went over real big.
Yeah.
So that started this whole thing, and I've done the show now for 15 years or so.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because I remember when you did it here, because we were there. And yeah, and it was just remember Jill? Yeah, she was great. It was just so that's how you started. You had no inkling of doing that prior to Bill talking to you about it.
Never thought of a one-man show. But
And now, what have you done with Mark Twain?
well, I've done theaters and college campuses, high school campuses. Today we had 9 and 10-year-olds there, and they were giggling all in the front
They
row.
loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done it in libraries, which goes over big because they already know who Mark Twain is, and and I've also done it in living rooms.
Really?
I work with Sue Hafner, who lives in Weston, and she has a website or internet production company where she finds places like intimate settings where performers can come.
Oh, how neat.
She calls it living room arts.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have to look that up. Oh, that is so neat. So I wonder, how many times do you think you've done Mark Twain?
I have no idea.
Thousands.
I don't know either. A lot.
Yeah, many.
Yeah. And it's gone through a metamorphosis, obviously, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Because each time you do it with an audience, you find things that work really well, things that don't.
And I
So
keep
you're
finding
kind
new
of there
material.
watching and helping.
I try to help, but
She's a big help.
I mean, I noticed that. I do.
But-
Yeah.
also to help him dress, because it's, you know, I mean, he's concentrating on about 10 other things.
Sure.
But to get, you know, the wig on, the mustache, the tie, the sound, all those kinds of things, that's not a
The
thing
sound
that-
being the biggest problem.
always.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And you really are a detail person, aren't you?
I try to be sometimes.
Yeah. Which is really, really
Yes.
neat. That's,
I guess I am, though. That's true.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought of it.
yeah. But
Lot
that's
more
important.
so than me.
You need that. You need that because you can't look in the mirror and figure out how your hair
No,
is. With,
exactly.
You know, it's,
No.
You're such a. How long have you been married?
It'll be 58 years, October 3rd.
God bless
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
That
Yeah.
is so wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is
How long
fabulous.
have you been married?
We've been married, what, 42 years? 43 years.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
you're qualifying.
We're getting
Yeah.
there. Yeah. And we still like each other.
See? That's it. We're still friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
Well,
spend all day together, and
best friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it has to be that way. I mean,
It does.
it isn't always that way, but it's so nice when it is.
It is,
You know, it helps
exactly.
you get through whatever it is you're getting through. You
Yep.
know. So tell us what you're doing, Sydney, because you have a business
Well,
too.
because, you know, actor, artist, and it is, you know, your income is like this, like a roller coaster. And when we came to New York, I figured I'll jump in and do anything that's available. I did a few TV commercials because the agent looked at me and said, "Oh my goodness, here's a woman with gray hair and wrinkles, and she's not trying to cover it up." So,
But you're beautiful.
Oh,
You are.
thank
Oh,
you
you
so
are.
much.
You
That's
are.
so sweet.
so I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to be an actor, and I'm doing all these things. We go to an agency, and she goes with me. And I said, "Well, Ron, we like you, but we really like her." And she lands
Two network spots.
two network spots that ran on the Super Bowl.
Are you serious?
Serious.
Oh my God.
I'm saying, okay, I give up.
No,
No, you two are just, but you know what it is? You're so natural.
But I don't act.
Yeah.
Let
But
me tell you.
you're so natural. I mean, people can't help but love you. I mean, you just fit whatever it is that they're looking for. You know?
Well,
It's-
it came at the right time. You know, we could pay the rent, we could the
But
sublet.
you did find a
But
job
then
that
I
can
did. I
bring
got
in
a
some
real
money.
job. I started working with two agents that handled. One handled hair and makeup artists, and one handled stylists and photographers. And so I spent 2 or 3 years, maybe even more, with them. And finally, one of them said, "Oh, I'm going into another field." So she gave me all her stylists, and so I opened my own agency, and that was 18 years ago.
wow.
So now I have 7 stylists who work, and my job is to get them jobs. You know, keep them working all the time.
Then how do you do that? I mean, do you go
Well,
looking for it, or do you? I mean, I'm sure now people know you, so
They
they'll
do
call
now,
you.
yes,
and
yes.
ask
And
you
your
to
big
refer
connection
people.
is through photographers, because what they do is print work primarily. I mean, you know, everyone's going into videos now, but primarily it's they dress the models, they find the wardrobe, you know, they find the props for, you know, and for whatever is shooting at the moment. Catalog work is the bread and butter, because that is continuous.
Yeah, yeah.
They do editorial, which puts them in touch with a lot of celebrities, but that gets old pretty fast.
Does it?
You know, once you do a few of those, and then you realize, number one, it doesn't pay anything.
Yeah.
And number two, it's high tension, you know, because these people are
Pretty
used to
intense,
being
yeah,
really
they're-
catered to, and
Yeah.
so most.
And I
of my-
understand that can be really difficult, catering to some of these people. I mean, their demands are just
Yeah, they're
over
Some
the
of the
top.
first thing you'd say when they come back from this big first question is, what were they like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'd say, never work with that person again.
And I
Or
won't
they'd
even
say, "What a
say who
lovely
some of them
person."
are,
Yeah.
but they're
Yeah.
some big stars.
Yeah.
And then, so now that's basically what they do. And although once in a while, like People Magazine, we do a lot
Oh,
of
do
work
you?
with them,
Yeah.
yeah. And just finished a shoot about a young girl that, you know what is interesting is that after Sandy Hook, and we did that feature story for them, they're now beginning to find these instances of children being shot.
Wow.
And we just finished a story about a young girl in New Mexico who survived, but she's riddled. But the whole point being is you don't think of people doing that. You think of them as kind of a gossip,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, but they're doing other
But
stories.
they're trying
Yeah.
to, yes, they're presenting
great.
that,
Yeah,
keeping
do
it
so.
in the public. And so we'll love to do that with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, some of those magazines go so far in the other direction
yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's, you don't even want to.
You
You
don't
don't
want-
even want to look at them online at the grocery store. You know,
That's right, that's
they're not
right.
even worth even
Yes.
your a passing glance.
Right.
But it's nice that People is trying to
They
do
are.
that,
They're making an effort, even though their bread and butter, I think, is the gossip. They are the largest circulated magazine in the country.
Yeah, well, it's still one of the ones that I would pick up and read. And, you know, you see things that are in there that are interesting about
That's
a certain
right.
person.
It's not
and
the Inquirer.
It's not, no, and
No.
it's not even,
No.
what
Not
is
even
it?
close.
Not
No.
even us.
No.
You know, that,
That's
I
right.
mean, it really does still have
Yes.
some credibility to it, which is.
Although in the old days, someone would come in and say they'd read so-and-so in the Inquirer, and we'd go, oh, that's impossible. And of course, 3 days later, it would be in the national news.
Exactly. Yeah. So you never know.
You never know. That's
It's-
right.
Now, oh gosh, I'm looking at the time and I'm looking like we're winding down, and I'm thinking, oh no,
Let's talk fast.
how can that happen? What is there anything else that you special that you'd like to share?
Well, we have 3 beautiful children.
Yes.
That's probably the major accomplishment, and 2 wonderful grandchildren, which we've talked about. But my oldest daughter is in Chicago still, and she's a Aqua Queen Zumba instructor and has this huge following, so she keeps everyone
neat.
healthy, including herself. Then
And do you do any of that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
when she's around, yeah. And then our middle daughter they work together.
She's a wonderful
And
stylist.
she's a great
Isn't that
stylist.
She really
So
is.
she's in New York.
She's
Yeah,
in New
she
York.
lives a
that's
block
right.
away, actually.
Oh, that's neat.
And then my son, Ronnie, who we saw today, and he's gone now to a wedding in Pennsylvania, but he's a rock and roll drummer.
Really?
And he's
Very successful.
He's been around the world 3 times. And he just got back from Japan. He plays in Lisa Loeb's. Do you know Lisa Loeb?
Yeah.
In her band 9 Stories, and he's been with her a dozen years.
Wow. So that's quite a life.
Yes, that's another.
Yeah.
That's your next interview.
Yeah. Oh, can you get him
Sure.
for me? That'd be fun. That'd be absolutely fantastic. But you know, you're such an amazing couple. You know, you're so much fun. You're so real, and there's just so much to talk about. And I wish we had a lot more time. But I'm so glad that you came and that you were part of this. And I just love you. And I think that our audience is going to just be so thrilled to get to know you. As we
Terrific.
are, and your art. Just quickly talk a little bit about your art. I remember your drawings from Cuba.
Yes, you do. Huh?
I do.
Wow. Yes, I draw pretty much. Well, I draw something every day, but I do dedicate at least a couple of days a month to solidly going out and drawing and finding a place that I really want to draw in. And now I oil painted watercolor, but now I've gone to drawing quickly where I am, because you don't have a lot of time in New York to just stand there. And I go home and I colorize it on the computer. So I can spend hours and hours doing a line that I did in a second, making that work on the computer. And that's a lot of fun. So I can send you some examples.
Please do, because I'd love our audience to see what you do, because that's a whole nother dimension.
And your website.
And the website,
and your website.
RonCrawfordArt.com.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll put that on the screen so that people can see it. But I would love some of your pictures.
Absolutely.
To put on.
And they call those giclée prints.
Giclée is the French word for
for
the process of doing it in the computer.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
So the original actually exists as an electronic file.
Wow.
But you can do things that you can't do otherwise.
Yeah.
So
You know what I love about the two of you? One of the many things I love about the two of you is you keep growing. I mean, you just you are so alive and you're so real, and you don't stop, do you?
No.
I hope not.
Sometimes you're
I'm
afraid of
80
your.
in a month. So
Are you serious?
I'm serious. In November. I'll be
November
80.
what?
November 24.
Of course, you're a Sagittarian.
Of course.
Well, so am I. I can't believe that.
And I'm
It's
younger.
true.
I'm younger by a year
Yeah,
and
I
a
married
half.
a younger man.
So did I.
See? You
That's
may
the
have
secret.
something there you go.
Yeah, that is.
You can always pull the boss routine.
Oh
I'm
yeah, we
older.
try. And they let us think we are, don't they?
That's
Sometimes
right.
We are.
That's right.
We are. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much.
You're
You're
so
very
I
welcome.
love
Thanks
you
for having
both,
us.
Yeah.
both. And for all of you out there, please go to Ron's website, because when you see the art that he does, you will be totally, totally amazed. And I promise you, I'll have them back again. So until next time, thank you. And thank you all for joining us, and keep talking.